The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast harsh shadows as Michael watched his world crumble in slow motion. 6 months ago, he'd been planning the perfect proposal to Sarah, the woman who'd stolen his heart with her infectious laugh and ambitious dreams. Now, confined to a wheelchair after a devastating car accident that had shattered his spine, he wondered if those dreams included a future with him. "I can't do this anymore, Michael," Sarah's voice echoed in the sterile hallway, her designer heels clicking impatiently against the linoleum. "Look at you, look at us. This isn't what I signed up for when we started dating." Michael's hands gripped the wheel rims of his chair, knuckles white with tension. 3 weeks had passed since he'd been discharged. 3 weeks of Sarah's increasingly distant behavior, her reluctance to be seen with him in public, her excuses to avoid spending time together. But he hadn't expected this conversation. Not here, not now, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the quiet suffering of others. "Sarah, please," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the distant beeping of medical equipment. "I know this is hard, but we can work through this together. I'm still the same person you fell in love with." She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and cutting. "The same person, Michael? You can't even walk, you can't drive, you can't do half the things we used to do together." "I had plans for my life, dreams of traveling the world, dancing at our wedding, having a normal family. How is any of that possible now?" The words hit him like physical blows. Around them, the hospital continued its rhythm of healing and hope, but in this moment, Michael felt more broken than he had in the immediate aftermath of his accident. At least then, he'd had Sarah's love to sustain him through the darkest hours. "I understand if you need time," he said quietly, fighting back tears, "but please don't give up on us. Don't give up on me." Sarah's expression hardened, and she glanced around the corridor with obvious embarrassment. That's when Michael noticed the elderly man in the wheelchair near the vending machines, quietly observing their conversation. The man's weathered hands rested peacefully in his lap, and despite his frail appearance, his eyes held a wisdom that seemed to span decades. "You want to prove you're still the same person?" Sarah's voice rose slightly, attracting stares from passing nurses. "Fine. You see that pathetic old man over there in his wheelchair?" She pointed directly at the elderly gentleman. "Kick his wheelchair over. Show me you still have some fight left in you, some edge. Do that, and maybe I'll consider staying. Maybe I'll even marry you." The request hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Michael stared at Sarah in disbelief, unable to process what she'd just asked him to do. The elderly man had heard every word as a slight flinch made that clear, but he remained composed, his dignity intact despite the cruel suggestion. "Sarah, I can't do that. I won't do that," Michael said firmly, his voice gaining strength. "That's not who I am, and it's not who I want to be." "Then you're not the man I thought you were," she snapped. "You're just another helpless invalid who's given up on life. I deserve better than this. I deserve better than you." As Sarah turned to leave, clicking away on her expensive heels, Michael felt something shift inside him. The pain of her rejection was real, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of clarity. He looked at the elderly man, who was now slowly wheeling his chair closer. "Son," the old man said gently, his voice carrying the weight of experience, "in my 87 years on this earth, I've learned that the true measure of a person isn't found in what they can do with their legs, but in what they choose to do with their heart." Michael nodded, tears finally flowing freely. "I'm sorry about what she said. That was inexcusable." "No need to apologize for someone else's character, young man. But let me tell you something, that woman just did you the biggest favor of your life. She showed you exactly who she is when things get tough. Better to learn it now than after years of marriage." The old man extended a weathered hand. "I'm Frank, by the way, Frank Morrison. I've been coming to this hospital for treatments 3 times a week for the past 2 years. Cancer," he explained matter-of-factly. "And in all the time, I've seen a lot of people face their darkest moments. Some rise to the occasion, and others, well, others show their true colors." Over the following weeks, Michael found himself looking forward to his physical therapy sessions, not just for the progress he was making, but for the conversations with Frank, who always seemed to be there at just the right time. Frank had been a Korean War veteran, a high school teacher for 40 years, and a husband to his beloved wife Helen for 62 years before her passing. Helen used to say that love isn't about the easy times, Frank told him one afternoon as they sat in the hospital's garden. Anyone can love when everything's perfect. Real love is what happens when life knocks you down and your person helps you get back up. Not because they have to, but because they can't imagine doing anything else. It was Frank who suggested that Michael volunteer at the hospital's children's ward. Those kids don't see a man in a wheelchair, Frank explained. They see someone who understands what it's like to face challenges. You'd be amazed at the difference you could make. Michael threw himself into volunteering, reading to young patients, helping with art therapy, and sharing his own story of resilience. The children's laughter became the soundtrack to his healing, their innocent questions and honest observations helping him see himself not as broken, but as someone with a unique perspective to offer. 6 months after Sarah's departure, Michael was organizing a wheelchair basketball tournament for the pediatric patients when he met Dr. Emma Chen, a pediatric occupational therapist who had recently joined the hospital staff. Unlike Sarah's superficial charm, Emma possessed a quiet strength and genuine compassion that drew people to her like moths to a flame. "I've been watching you with the kids," Emma said one evening as they cleaned up after a particularly energetic game session. "You have a gift for connecting with them. They trust you in a way that's rare." Their friendship developed naturally, built on shared values and mutual respect. Emma never saw Michael's wheelchair first day. She saw his kindness, his resilience, his ability to find joy even in difficult circumstances. When he told her about Sarah's cruel ultimatum, Emma's response was immediate and fierce. "Thank God you didn't do what she asked," Emma said, her usually gentle voice filled with protective anger. "That woman didn't deserve a single day of your time, let alone your love. What she asked you to do wasn't about proving your strength, it was about proving you'd compromise your values for someone who didn't value you." 1 year later, Michael found himself back in that same hospital corridor, but this time everything had changed. He was there to visit Frank, who was recovering from a successful surgery that had finally eliminated the last traces of his cancer. Emma was by Michael's side, not as a girlfriend or fiancée tilde copyrightee, but as his wife of 3 months. Their wedding had been everything Sarah had claimed was impossible, filled with dancing. Emma was an accomplished ballroom dancer who had learned to adapt their favorite routines to include Michael's wheelchair, travel. They honeymooned in Italy, discovering that love truly could conquer logistical challenges, and the promise of building a family together. They were already in the process of adopting a young girl from the children's ward whose parents had been unable to care for her. "You know what I've learned?" Michael told Frank as they celebrated the old man's clean bill of health. "Sarah was right about one thing. I'm not the same person I was before the accident. I'm better." That experience taught me what really matters, helped me find my purpose, and ultimately led me to Emma. "I wouldn't change a thing." Frank smiled, his eyes twinkling with the satisfaction of a man who had witnessed love triumph over adversity. Sometimes life has to break us down completely before it can build us back up into who we were always meant to be. And sometimes, the people who leave during our darkest moments are just making room for the ones who were meant to stay. As Michael and Emma walked hand in hand down that same corridor where his heart had once been shattered, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Sarah's cruel test had revealed not his weakness, but his strength. In refusing to kick an elderly man's wheelchair for the amusement of someone who didn't deserve his love, Michael had unknowingly passed the most important test of his life, a test of character that would determine his true destiny. The fluorescent lights still cast the same harsh shadows, but now they seemed softer somehow, illuminated by the warmth of a love that had been built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and the unshakable belief that true partnership means facing life's challenges together, not running away when things get difficult.